Well, hey everybody, it's Sandy and welcome back to my channel dedicated to helping you advocate for your own health one topic at a time. So guys, I had dropped this note in the Facebook group a while back, and I'm just going to give that a plug for those of you who don't know. Sandy's DIY Health Advocacy has a Facebook page, and there is a Facebook group that you can ask to join and get a little more of an interactive discussion. So I put a thread up there about barefoot shoes, and I was just kind of going to test the water and see if anybody who watches my channel is interested in barefoot shoes. So far, I don't know, but I'd kind of still like to tweak your interest. So I have had a journey over the last couple months of getting myself accustomed to barefoot shoes, and as usual, I have more to say than really is appropriate for one video, so I'm going to try to break this into a few different videos and devote this one mostly to the fun stuff, which is showing you some shoes. But let me just tell you the genesis of this, which is that I have had, first of all, I've kind of been dealt not such a great hand when it comes to things like arthritis, joint health. I tend to be a little bit hypermobile in general, so things can kind of come out of alignment. I can get hurt sort of easily. I have to be careful about that. I also have arthritis in the hands and the feet, and my feet in particular have been on just this journey where it seemed like every time I got one problem solved, it created a new problem that was even worse. And I don't want to sound like I'm completely down on podiatrists, but I sort of am at this point, because I ended up just in desperation after years and years of just being miserable and not being able to figure out why my feet kept getting worse. Even though I thought I took good care of my feet, I ended up just sort of solving the problem for myself. And if I had discovered what I have discovered, which part of that does include minimalist shoes, maybe not barefoot, but definitely minimalist shoes. If I had discovered those and a couple of other things earlier, I would have been a lot better off. I am a whole lot better just in the last month or two of doing some of the things that I've been doing, including transitioning to minimalist shoes. But none of these things came from my podiatrist, and I've seen a few podiatrists actually. So what did I have going on? I had some arthritis. I had the arthritis of the big toe. I actually had that operated on both feet. But then I had developed a hammer toe, which is when a toe, I don't know if it was a claw toe or a hammer toe. There's two joints at the end of your toe, and when one of them is curled, it's a hammer toe, and when they're both curled, it's a claw toe. And sometimes you can get a situation where toes actually start to cross over. I have one where the toe, the ligament, I guess, is weak, and it's just beginning to cross under the big toe. Under, over is irrelevant. It's whether it's crossing. And on top of that, I had a lot of pain, like in the ball of the foot. Like over the last year, it would feel more and more like whenever I got out of bed and started walking and put my feet on the floor, it felt like I was up on the ball of the foot, and like the toes were sort of freely flying in the air, and that ball of the foot felt swollen, or like there was, sort of out of place, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. And I was told, okay, the plantar plate is shifted, and I was told, orthotics, and I was told lots of cushioning, and what I discovered, partly by accident and maybe partly because I was searching for solutions to these different problems, and started searching on YouTube for different kinds of exercises that I might do. And in the process, probably the algorithms targeted me for a variety of things, that most of which I sort of wrote off as fringe. One of which is like barefoot and minimalist shoes, until I heard Dr. Courtney Conley talk about them on Dr. Peter Attia's podcast. And I really started to listen. I won't say I'd go so far as to buy in completely to, I think if you're a barefoot shoe enthusiast and totally barefoot shoes work for you all the time in every situation, great. But making a transition like this, for me, I'm pushing 60. As I said, I've also had surgery on my feet, and you kind of have to let yourself be where you are and work from there. I don't think I have to go all in order to get a whole lot of benefit out of going in as far as I can. And like there's a saying, perfect is the enemy of good. So I have transitioned toward more barefoot shoes, but I will say that I am squarely in minimalist shoes at this point. So let me just talk about what those are. There's a few things that distinguish a minimalist shoe. A barefoot shoe is sort of the very end of the continuum. I think of this as a continuum. Minimalist shoes can be barefoot, but all barefoot shoes are minimalist. Barefoot is the most extreme form of a minimalist shoe. So basically what these encompasses are three things. The first one, which is no issue to get used to at all. In fact, it's a relief when you move to it. It's a shoe with a what's called a wide toe box. And now that I'm in it, I think of it as an anatomic toe box. I don't even think it's wide. Everybody's toe box is, well, most everybody's toe box is wider than the heel. And for some reason, we're all scrunched into these shoes where there's the heel is tapered, and then there's the midfoot, and then there's another tapering at the toe so that it looks narrow, more like the heel. And people's feet are not made that way. So I think of it as an anatomic toe box, but people call it the wide toe box. So all minimalist shoes will have a wide toe box. The other thing that most minimalist shoes will have, all minimalist shoes will have some degree of a very, very low, if not zero heel drop. What does zero heel drop mean? The heel drop is the measurement of how much drop there is from the heel to the toe. So if this is your heel and this is your toe, you'd be surprised to know that a pair of really typical like Brooks running shoes, 12 millimeter heel drop. So you're kind of walking on a 12 millimeter heel, right? It's kind of like, I've heard Courtney Conley say anything that's not zero is a high heel in her estimation. I wouldn't go that far for me, but yeah, I found that the zero heel drop pretty much saved my back. It completely rescued my back. I thought I had problems in the SI joint, which I do have some laxity in my SI joint, but a lot of this was just coming from being pitched forward, sort of always walking the way you would walk on a high heel. I also think that was putting a lot of stress on my knees. I do have some patellofemoral alignment issues with my knees. That's just a hereditary thing. You're born with it. But I find that it is a lot better since I'm in a zero heel drop. I do have a pair of shoes as with a 5 millimeter heel drop. That's the highest I go at this point, but most of my shoes are zero. So they will have a low, if not zero, heel drop. They will have the anatomic or wide toe box. And finally, there's the issue of stack height. And this is where I leave a little more room to navigate for myself. So the stack height refers to how much distance there is between the ground and your foot. So let's say you have a zero heel drop, so your foot is perfectly flat, just like when you were barefoot like a baby standing, your heel and your toe would be at exactly the same plane, but you were right on the ground. So is there 3 millimeters sole, or is there a sole that's 6 millimeters or 10 millimeters? That's the area where I found I have to let myself play around with it a little, and it kind of depends on what I'm walking on. So sometimes I do go to a stack height, for example, when I'm going to be on pavement. With my arthritic conditions, it's just too much for me too soon to go to a very, very low stack height with almost no cushion if I'm going to be walking around on pavement. Now, if I'm walking on the wood floors, or I'm walking on a soft path or something with like pine needles, like a hiking trail that's fairly level, then I can do a much less cushioned, a much lower stack height. But those are the three variables that you look for and figure out how you want to go if you want to make a transition into barefoot shoes. I do have some tips for that, and I think maybe I'll dedicate another video to that, but the biggest one is not too many variables at a time. So like I said, I sort of play around with the stack height, so maybe I will tolerate a little cushion. It can't be really thick and springy, but I will tolerate a little cushion, and in fact need some, for example, when I'm walking on pavement. Now, what I have found since I have transitioned to the minimalist shoes or the barefoot shoes is that I realized that a lot of my foot pain and swelling actually was coming from being pitched at that angle. A lot of the pain I had was in my forefoot. Like I said, I had a toe that was kind of clawing and getting bent. I realized that was because I was being told get more and more cushion, and I was too soft. Can you imagine walking on like 6 inches of foam? It's very hard to do that. My toes were clawing their way through all that cushioning. When I went to a shoe with a much lower level of cushioning, even if it had a little stack height, my toes were able to splay out when I went through the gait cycle. So I walk, I put the heel or the midfoot down, and when I go through the stride, I have the toes splayed out straight. They're not clawing at anything. I'm also not putting weight into the forefoot, which isn't really meant to hold my weight all the time. You're really supposed to be like flat on your heels in standard anatomic position like you would stand on the floor. I don't recommend anybody does this cold turkey. especially if you've not been in shoes that have close to a zero heel drop. You might have problems with your Achilles tendon, especially at a certain age. You're not going to be able to recover from that if you do something to damage your Achilles tendon. It's going to be a long road to recovery. So this is something you have to transition into slowly. And again, I'll talk about more of that in another video, but I did get my Achilles tendon transitioned. It didn't take as long as I thought, probably because I do a lot of yoga, but I did have to be very, very patient about walking like that. It took me, now I can go all day wearing a zero heel drop. So let me show you just a couple of the things that I got. So I bought a few pairs of sneakers. Now, like I had said, the stack height is one thing I was experimenting with in order to make the transition a little more comfortable. So this is Ultra Running, A-L-T-R-A. Just gonna show it to you. This comes in a variety of colors. I actually got a black one as well. I liked it so much. This one is probably the least barefoot, and in fact, barefoot enthusiasts would say, yeah, this shoe isn't barefoot at all. Now, it does have the zero heel drop. It does have that anatomic toe box. I can put my toes in there. I can splay my toes in there. I can even put toe spacers in between my toes and wear this. But it does have a high stack height. You can't tell from looking at the outside. You don't really know where the bottom of the foot is, but it is in the specs of the shoe. This is about a 24 millimeter stack height. But this is the golden ticket for me in terms of getting myself used to walking with the zero heel drop. Like I said, 1 or 2 variables at a time, getting used to the nice width in here where your toes aren't crunched together. That doesn't take any getting used to. But walking is a very different stride when you're on a zero heel drop. You don't tend to hit your heel down real hard. That would hurt. When you're walking on shoes that have a heel drop, that is what you tend to heel strike. You tend to just hit kind of hard on the heel. You don't so much on these. You almost have to develop a new gait. So I found that the 24 millimeter, not really soft, but some cushion, just provided enough insulation from pavement, because I'm on and off pavement almost all day where I live. Everything is pavement. So if I lived in where some nice hiking trails were, it would be a different story if there was like soft ground, but really everything is pavement, and this made all the difference in the world for me. So now on a typical day, like when I head out for a brisk walk, which I do walk a lot, I will grab this shoe still, but I no longer need it for everything else. But this is the shoe that I'll grab, and again, I started very slowly. Okay, so this is the Ultra zero heel drop. It is called the Escalante 4, women's Escalante 4. Now there's different Escalantes. There's like Escalante Racer or whatever. This is just the basic women's Escalante 4. There's also a company called Zero, and it's not spelled with a Z, it's spelled with an X, X-E-R-O. And these are true barefoot shoes. So this is the Zero. They have a shoe called the Prio and the Prio Neo. This is their Prio Neo. It means, I guess it's their old Prio, but made with more neoprene. And the other one that I have is the Zero HFS2. These are like 2 of their classic shoes. They're actually quite similar, except for this has sort of, oh, nice. This has sort of a flat patterning on the bottom, and this has more like some little lugs so you can get a little traction. Now, Zero shoes, as I said, are totally barefoot shoes. You can like roll these up. They're very, very flexible. They allow your ankle to move. They allow your foot to move. They allow you to grasp with your foot if you need to. It's real easy to splay your toes down and walk through your gait cycle. I love these shoes. Again, I wouldn't have worn these on the pavement right away because I think the stack height is something like 7 millimeters. It's very tough to get used to something like this on pavement. That said, I did go on a hiking trail that's just very soft, not like rocks or anything, but just soft pine needles and dirt and sand and stuff, and I did great with these. There are a couple of things you can use to help you transition. There is a company called North Sole that makes these orthotics they're just basically a little bit of stack height. They don't offer any arch support or anything like that, but they do have that wider toe box, because if you put a regular orthotic into something with such a wide toe box, you might find your toes like dangling off the side. Might not be the end of the world, but these don't take away the flatness and the flexibility of the barefoot shoe, because that's part of what's really nice about the barefoot experience, is learning to work with the flexibility of the shoe so your foot's not in a cast and you actually start to use the muscles of your foot. And this has helped me to transition these. So I can now wear these out on pavement. I wouldn't take a really brisk walk yet, but I will wear the thicker of the two different kind of barefoot insoles from North Sole in the Zero shoes, and I can walk on pavement fairly comfortably now with those. And then finally, I wanted to get a pair of shoes that were just kind of cute, right? Because now that I'm so used to the Zero heel drop, it's really hard for me to wear something where my heels are tipped up. I start to feel that pain that I used to have in my forefoot, and it seems like so obvious. How did I not think that the pain in the forefoot is because I'm putting my weight in my forefoot, which is not where it's supposed to go. It's supposed to be more back, a little more balanced and back in the heels. Anyway, so I wanted something that was kind of cute. You're not going to find like an elegant strappy sandal, but I wanted something that, you know, maybe to just go out and look cute, go out to lunch or go out on date night or something like that. And there is a company called Splay, and they make a few different styles. And I decided to get this sort of preppy sneaker. It looks sort of like, I think it's supposed to look kind of like the Adidas Samba. It still has that wide toe box, and it has the Zero heel drop. Now, this is not a real flexible shoe, however. This is, you know, kind of stiff. It is a different experience walking in this. Once you get used to the incredible flexibility, like even the Ultra is, you know, really quite flexible compared to other shoes, even with the stack height that it's got. So once you get used to that, then this feels a little bit heavy on your feet and kind of like, it sort of reminds me like how much better my feet are, how much better off I am with the more minimalist shoes and all that flexibility, so my foot can do the work. And it's not like in a cast, I'm not working my way over and under a cast when I'm going through a gait cycle. But nonetheless, if I'm not going to be out like doing a whole lot of walking, I still wanted something that was just kind of cute to wear and looked like a little more fashionable. And I'm really glad that I got these. They have some pretty good sales on that site. So I think these were like $79. And I think that if it's your first time purchasing from them, you can get like a 15% off coupon, like when you sign up, that typical thing, you sign up for emails and whatever. So I just wanted to share with you some of those. I'm still exploring like what I might do for a real hiking shoe. There is another brand called Topo that makes, it's kind of like Ultra where it's not quite barefoot, but it's close. And Topo does make some really nice shoes. They have the tiniest bit of arch support, so they're not totally flat. They do have some Zero heel drop. I have a pair of hiking shoes of theirs that are the Vibram sole, really good if there's wet conditions or icy conditions, but unfortunately they are a 5mm heel drop. So that's still pretty minimal, considering most shoes are like 8 to 12. But now that I'm so used to the Zero, I'm not crazy about that. Any heel drop at all. I really realize now how much stress that has put on my knees. And again, like everything else in my life, this is a multi-pronged approach. It's not just the shoes, it's exercises that I'm doing, it's other things that I'm learning about in order to improve my health and longevity. But if we're talking about the shoes as the variable here, that heel drop has proven to be a really significant variable. And I would say that as long as you can condition, stretch your Achilles and do so very slowly so that you don't hurt it and get it used to being in that position where it's lengthened, and your heels are down on the ground, you could start by just walking around your house barefoot and see how you do for a while, several minutes every day. If you do that all the time, do it a little bit more. Maybe buy a pair of barefoot shoes and just wear them for an hour a day and see how you do. You definitely don't want to have a problem with your Achilles. When it first starts to sing to you, it's time to ice it and rest and start over after you've rested it and it has quieted down. So that's when I do a video about how to transition into these shoes and what my tips are, I'll spend a little more time talking about the Achilles tendon, but that's probably the most important piece of this journey, because a setback, I don't know about you guys, but I find pushing 60 years old, setbacks are not like they used to be. A setback can really put me out of commission for a long time, and not only will it put me out of commission for a long time, it takes longer to heal things that are damaged. But more importantly, the deconditioning I experience is very rapid. It didn't used to be that way like 20 years ago, but if I'm sitting on the couch for 2 weeks, I'll have significant muscle loss and deconditioning, and it puts me back quite a ways. So I try very hard to remember to start slowly with things and to avoid injury at all costs. So let me know if this was helpful, and I'm going to add some more videos to this and make it a series. So until next time, be well. Bye-bye.